Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very empowering show coming right up with special guest Amy Medling, and she's here today to share with us her new book, Healing PCOS, a 21-day plan for reclaiming your health and life with polycystic ovary syndrome. Now, Amy is a certified health coach who specializes in working with women with PCOS who are frustrated with the loss of hope that they feel when the only solution their doctors offer to lose weight is to take a pill or live with the symptoms. In response, Amy founded PCOS Diva and has developed a proven protocol of supplements, diet, and lifestyle programs that offer women tools to help gain control of their PCOS and also regain their fertility, femininity, health, and happiness. So let's welcome to the show, Amy Medling.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
What a pleasure it is to have you here. And my goodness, I'm so delighted to have read your book. You're really pulling PCOS really out in the forefront.
Well, that's what I was hoping, to raise more awareness to how serious of a condition it is, especially when it goes untreated, and it can affect up to 1 in 5 women worldwide. And the kind of scary statistic to me is between 50 to 70% of women that have it don't know they have it. So I appreciate you bringing some attention to PCOS.
Well, and for our listeners that are new to you, why don't you share with us your story and how you got down this path? Why PCOS became such an important part in your life and discovering on how to heal it?
Yeah, I would be happy to. So as a health coach now and working with thousands of women with PCOS, I often hear the same story, and that story is so similar to mine, that women feel frustrated and that they've lost all hope because the only solution their doctor seems to offer is the birth control pill and the diabetic drug metformin, which often can make you feel a lot worse than you already do. For much of my life, I struggled with hormonal symptoms of PCOS, as well as symptoms like hair loss, hair growth, or hirsutism, hair where you don't want it, hypoglycemia, and blood sugar issues. I was told at age 18 in college that doctors would have to jump through hoops one day to get me pregnant, when I was just there to, find out why I hadn't had a period in several months. I wasn't actually diagnosed with PCOS until I was age 31, when I was suffering with secondary infertility. And this is very common with women with PCOS. They finally receive their diagnosis when they're trying to get pregnant. After the birth of my second son, I just did not bounce back. I was depressed. I was fatigued. I had a lot of brain fog. And I was at a place where I couldn't be the mom and the wife that I wanted to be. And knowing that I wasn't able to tolerate the pharmaceuticals that doctors had offered, I knew that there had to be another way to feel better. I was at 31, 32, I was way too young to feel so old and sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. And I had spent so many years sort of thinking and acting like a victim, waiting for somebody to give me the magic pill. I came to this realization that I had to be the magic pill, and I had to make lifestyle changes with my diet and my stress and the way I approached my body and my PCOS in order to start healing my symptoms. And my doctor at the time, she was a reproductive endocrinologist. As I was making these slow changes, she started seeing improvements in my labs, and I started bringing research to her that I had found. I had done literally hundreds of hours of research online, looking at studies online to see, what supplements I could use to help balance my blood sugar. And foods that I could eat to kind of help quell the inflammation that was going on in my body. And she started sending patients kind of on the side, giving them my email, those who were also having trouble with pharmaceuticals. And I was realizing that my protocol that I developed for myself was also working for other women with PCOS. So that's really what led me to do the work that I do with PCOS Diva and to ultimately write my book, Healing PCOS.
And bring that forward. And for our listeners that also might be new to PCOS, what exactly is that?
So PCOS stands for polycystic ovary syndrome. It's the leading cause of infertility in women, and it's also the most common endocrine disorder in women. And as I mentioned, it affects up to 1 in 5 women. I believe, and I write this in my book, that the root cause of PCOS is really hormonal imbalance, insulin resistance, and inflammation. There definitely can be a genetic component. I know now that my mother had PCOS. In the 70s, her doctor told her that she had Stein-Leventhal disorder, which is kind of the name that it was given back in the early 60s and 70s. And then I also look back at both of my grandmothers. They both had fertility issues and many of the symptoms of PCOS. So I do think that for me there was definitely a genetic component. After I had started really changing the way that I lived with my diet, my lifestyle, and after doctors told me that they'd have to jump through hoops one day and that I would probably never get pregnant again without fertility treatments, at age 37, I became pregnant with my beautiful daughter, and she's now 9. And she may also inherit our PCOS genes, and she is definitely a big motivator for me to continue doing what I do, because I want her to know that if she does develop PCOS, it's not the negative thing that I once thought it was. It's really this opportunity to, the name of my company is called PCOS Diva. It's this opportunity to really take tender, loving care of herself and be a PCOS diva.
Well, and gosh, if that is the case, she'll have such a head start on how to kind of walk through, having PCOS. So, I mean, she'll have such a head start on that. It'll just be, I don't want to say no big deal, but it'll just be like a new way of living for her.
That is my hope, yes.
Yeah, I can see that you're doing that with hundreds, if not thousands, of women. And so we talked about some of the symptoms. We talked about, you mentioned hair loss. What are some of the other symptoms that women typically encounter?
So for most women with PCOS, I think that there's some level of insulin resistance. And insulin resistance can cause weight gain, sugar cravings, skin tags, hypoglycemia, rough or red bumps like on your upper arms. It can cause dark patches on your neck, knees, elbows, chest. So those are all sort of the symptoms driven by insulin resistance. And then hormonal imbalances or elevated levels of androgens, which are male hormones, which is a very typical sign of PCOS. Those symptoms could be acne, kind of like that jawline acne, the hair loss, or hair growth, which you'd have like on your chin or chest or inner thighs, stomach. And then symptoms that are a sign of low progesterone, which is another type of hormonal imbalance that women with PCOS can have. That can cause anxiety, PMS, infertility, and then inflammation, which is sort of the final root issue with PCOS. Inflammation can also cause weight gain, brain fog, joint pain, IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. That can also lead to acne, gum disease. That's another thing that a lot of women with PCOS deal with, and I know it was something that I dealt with. Depression, fatigue. So there's just this myriad of symptoms, and because PCOS is a syndrome, it really doesn't affect any one woman the same way. You can have sort of your own individualized host of symptoms. A lot of women with PCOS are overweight or struggle with their weight, but 30% of women with PCOS present as kind of this thin phenotype or don't really have weight issues. So I think that is another reason why it makes it tricky to diagnose.
Yeah, to understand. Well, is this something that women can develop at any age? Maybe they don't have it in their teens and they develop it later in life, or maybe it's something they just don't recognize, kind of like how, or the doctors don't recognize, kind of like what you went through?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. My feeling is that it's something that is present from adolescence through to post-menopause and beyond. There's no cure for PCOS, but I do think that a lot of women, it has been masked because so many are on the birth control pill. Mm-hmm. And when you're a teenager and you have irregular cycles, that's often what you're given, and you can take the birth control pill, up to the point where you're ready to start getting pregnant, and you come off, and then now you realize that you have PCOS because all of those symptoms that have kind of been at bay, the pill sort of acts like as a Band-Aid. It doesn't really get to the root cause, but it does help keep symptoms at bay. Then you start dealing with those symptoms in your 20s and 30s. And so it's often common for women to get diagnosed at that period in their life.
Yeah, when they come off the pill and they're
right,
mm-hmm. and they're noticing the symptoms, like, well, hey, my cycle isn't normal, I'm having all these other things that are happening that weren't before.
Right, like the acne and the hair loss and the weight gain and inflammation. Correct.
Yeah, that's and I think and that's why I just love your book so much, because there are a lot of women that are dealing with this. I mean, they just had on the talk, they were talking about hair loss in women, and a couple
mm-hmm.
of the show hosts were talking about how they're suffering from it. And, they probably don't even, and I'm not saying we're not diagnosing anybody, but, there's, PCOS is something that hits so many women. It would be interesting to see if that's something that that is happening there as well, because it just sounds like all the same symptoms that we're talking about here.
Yeah, it's really wonderful to hear that that's part of the conversation on such a high platform show, because I think that women are embarrassed about talking about some of these symptoms and sort of suffer in silence. And so it's great that there's dialogue and women are willing to share their experiences, because it helps us feel like we're not so alone.
Well, yeah, I mean, no woman wants to talk about hair loss, right? Or growing hair on your chin and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, we don't want to chat about that. But, if we can get to the root cause of what's causing that, then, hey, let's have this discussion. Let's talk about it. So, well,
yeah, and one other quick thing that I thought about with the hair loss too, is that there's a recent study that just came out about vitamin D, and that low vitamin D can actually cause thinning hair. That there was a study that was done in Egypt that said that women with thinning hair had 5 times lower blood levels of vitamin D. So it could be, as simple as making sure your vitamin D is optimized.
Yeah. And I know on your website you've got all these great supplements that don't have, and I'd love to start talking about diet too, because mm-hmm. there are a lot of things, and before we hop into the supplements, there are a lot of things that we should look at as far as either removing from our diet or adding to our diet. And I'd love for you to share about how important diet is when we're maintaining this.
Well, I think that diet is really the first step, and I don't like, honestly, the idea of diet. When I talk about diet, it isn't, going on a diet. It's really more of, a food plan that's sustainable over the course of a lifetime. And that's what I'm really hoping that women can discover for themselves. And really shifting your view of food as using food as a treatment. Food is medicine. It really, it teaches our cells and it's what forms our the cells of our body. And for women with PCOS, it can really quell that inflammation that's going on. So I think that rather than approaching diet from this place of, I call it diet deprivation and denial, thinking, oh gosh, I have PCOS, I'll never have pizza again, or I'll never be able to eat ice cream again. Rather focusing on nourishing yourself with nutrient-rich food. And healthy food can taste really delicious. And in my book, I provided lots of recipes and, a way at looking at flavoring your food so that it really is delicious and that you enjoy eating it. That's a really important part of being a PCOS diva and eating like a diva. But I do think that women with PCOS, although I don't advocate for a vegan or vegetarian lifestyle, I do think that your food program, your food plan needs to be very plant heavy. So, lots of plant-based food, nuts and leafy greens and vegetables and low glycemic fruit and healthy fats like olive oil and avocado. It's really, really important.
Well, and it's interesting. I mean, you've got like half your book has all these great recipes, and I was looking through them, and I was just amazed. Like, some of them just sound so fabulous, and they look pretty easy to get together. When you were doing all of your research and pulling all the things together for yourself, did it take you a long time to develop all these recipes or the eating program?
Well, I think that it's a process. You take. I don't want people to feel overwhelmed. You just take small steps slowly over time, create sort of this sustainable lifestyle. I do think it's so important for people to get in the kitchen and start cooking. And it can be a very simple meal. Cut up some vegetables and put some olive oil and some seasoning salt. I know I have several different seasoning salt recipes in the book, and then just throw it in your oven and roast these vegetables, and then you can just grill some marinated meat, and you have a delicious dinner, and it's not that difficult. Really getting over this idea that cooking has to be hard, I think is the first step. And then it's just the more that you do, the easier it gets. Anything that you start at first, it can seem kind of fearful and overwhelming, but it's the act of moving forward and taking those steps, that is the important part. And before you know it, you're going to be, I call it sizzling in the kitchen. You'll be sizzling in the kitchen too.
Well, I could use a little sizzle in my kitchen. And your recipes, they offer a lot of sizzle, I'll tell you. There's a lot there. Well, and, it's interesting because when we look at, like, what we put in our bodies and how important that is, I mean, of course, if we're eating things that have been sprayed with, chemicals for a field, that's, of course it's going to affect our bodies in some kind of a way. So we want to look at eating, and you talk about this, about eating really clean.
Yeah, and you know what? It doesn't, you do what you can. I mean, I really focus on progress, not perfection. So if you can't buy all organic foods, that's okay. Start slowly with what you can do. I think it's really important to buy organic fat. So things like organic butter would be very important because fat is so concentrated that you really want to focus on healthy organic fats, and then clean animal protein, as clean as you can get it and afford. Nowadays grass-fed beef you can buy it in the grocery store, like ground beef. It's not that expensive. You can buy organic chicken at wholesale clubs like Costco, and it can be really affordable. And then look at the Environmental Working Group's website, because they'll give you some guidelines on the important produce to buy organically. And then those that are cleaner and you don't need to buy organic. But again, I don't want it to be this super overwhelming. You just take it in little steps, because we're in this for the long haul. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah. You do things like go to your farmer's market and ask, if they have organic foods, and a lot of them do, so you just have to ask the questions.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a good point. Like, buying locally is so important. Not only are you contributing to your local economy, but our bodies we should be eating more local and in season. That's another really important point to make, that strawberries in December, they're not, they don't, I don't think nourish your body the same way strawberries do in June. So, focus on seasonal foods and seasonal flavors.
Yeah, I've heard that before, where it's real important to eat with the seasons and how your body will absorb what it needs and gets all the nutrients it needs when you eat that way. So it was nice to see, some of the recipes that you have also in your book, that you can kind of go from season to season as well.
Yeah, and on my website, I offer seasonal-based meal plans that they sort of take into account kind of the Ayurvedic principles of eating according to the seasons. I think that that's really a powerful way to approach your health, especially now that we're in the Vata, going into the Vata time of year, which is kind of the cold and dry air. You think about November, and it's really it's not hot and humid anymore. At least where I live in New Hampshire. And so I need to counteract that with warming, more oily foods. So in my fall meal plan, you'll see a lot of like chilies and soups and stews. And you'll find that when you're eating according to the seasons, you just stay healthier in general.
Yeah, I mean, you have so many resources on your website. I mean, I've kind of gone through them and checked everything out, and gosh, it would take a few weeks to go through everything, but you've got some great information there. And so it's a great resource to complement also your book, Healing PCOS. Now, in the book, you also talk about like meditation and exercise. So, how much of that should we implement in our day?
Well, I do. I frame exercise in this idea of movement, and I call it "Move Like a PCOS Diva" is the name of the chapter. And I do think that we need to move every day. And I spent a lot of my early adult life running, and I was running not out of pleasure, really. I was running as a form of self-punishment. So I would get on the treadmill and try to counteract the calories that I ate during the day and sort of burn them off. And this whole concept of calorie in, calorie out is sort of passé, I guess. And I think that we should look at movement as a way of finding something that is really sustainable, that brings us joy, that we like to do. Because I think that feeds us and nourishes us on a whole different level. And I think looking at what you enjoyed doing as a child is a good way to get back to reconnecting with the joy of movement. So for me, I loved playing basketball. I love playing tag. So, I like going out with my kids and playing some of those things. I like riding my bike. I like hiking, and I've really rediscovered this. I know I took a couple dancing classes when I was little and enjoyed those, and now I really love Pure Barre. It's not really dancing per se, but the barre workouts, kind of uses your body in a similar way as dance, and it offers kind of an opportunity for meditation too, because you make kind of a mind-body connection, and it really helps me reduce stress levels during my day. And you had mentioned meditation. I think meditation is a great way to manage our stress. And for women with PCOS, stress really wreaks havoc on our bodies. We are already kind of hardwired to be have elevated stress levels. We have elevated levels of the hormone cortisol in our blood. And cortisol is a stress hormone, so we need to learn how to manage our stress and manage our cortisol, and meditation is a great tool to do that. And I don't think that you necessarily have to, meditate on a meditation pillow and chant Om. Meditation can be as simple as, this is my little ritual. In the afternoon, I make myself a pot of tea, and just the act of making the tea makes you slow down and become more mindful, because you can't really rush the process. You have to, spoon out my tea leaves and wait for the tea to steep, and then I have to slowly pour the tea into the teacup, or else the water spills all over. And then I'll just sit by my window and kind of look out at my garden and sip the tea for a few minutes and take a pause in my day and be in the moment. And that's really what meditation is all about, just being in the now and in the moment. And that really fortifies me for when my kids come home from school and the after-school kind of craziness ensues and I've got to start dinner and everything. It's just taking a moment pause for myself and being mindful and in the moment.
Well, and what a more enjoyable experience that will be when we can actually be in the moment and just, enjoy, either like how you're saying with your children around you, or just the tea, or whatever it is, just being in that moment.
Yeah, and one of the other little meditation ideas that I have in the book too is like a flower gazing. I like to treat myself every week, and I buy myself some flowers, and they don't have to be expensive. Oftentimes I get like the cheapest bouquet at Trader Joe's, but they're pretty and fresh and lively, and I'll put them on my table and just take a moment and just gaze at the flowers for a minute and really appreciate their beauty and kind of be in the moment. So there's different ways of meditating. There's lots of apps out there to help guide you. But whatever it is, find a way to help reduce the stress in your life.
Well, I think I have time, and I've got like all these questions because, my goodness, your book was just, Healing PCOS has just so much resources and so much wisdom in it. I think I'll end on this. When we talk about sleep, how important is sleep? Because I know for a lot of women, that's a really difficult thing. Like they're not either getting enough or they have interrupted sleep. How important is sleep through all this?
Oh gosh, sleep can help in so many ways. It can help us with our appetite control. It can help us with balancing our hormones. It helps us with our mood, and it can help with cortisol or melatonin imbalances. Sleep is just so underrated. And I think that a lot of us have really poor sleep hygiene. I think, we're on a screen right up until the moment that we close our eyes. So in my book, I talk about creating sort of the nighttime sleep routine and getting into a better sleep hygiene habits. Wearing a sleep mask has been really instrumental for me in improving my sleep. Wearing blue light blocking glasses, I put those on you can get them on Amazon, about 8 o'clock at night. And that really has helped me with my sleep and resetting my circadian rhythm, which for a lot of women with PCOS is off. And so, yes, sleep is so important.
Oh. Well, do you know, Amy, my goodness, you have so much great information here. I mean, with Healing PCOS, it's just filled with so much useful tools. I mean, I'm having some symptoms. I'm reading your book and going to start implementing some things and just kind of getting to the root of, because when you get older, things change. Just kind of get to the root of some things for myself personally. And not only that, but the inspiration that you provide on your website. You have a quote on there, "Turn your wounds into wisdom" by Oprah Winfrey. And it's just such a calming, welcoming place to go. Where can people go to connect with you and be part of your community?
Oh, thank you, Marianne. So PCOSdiva.com is sort of the hub where you'll find all of the blog information. I've written over, I think, about 400 blog posts about different aspects of PCOS at this point. I have multiple free guides to help you determine what labs to ask for, how to work with your doctor to get the right treatment plan. And I have a supplement guide to tell you sort of what supplements to consider for PCOS. And then I'm available on pretty much all social media outlets at PCOSdiva.com and happy to engage and interact with you there. And you can always feel free to send me an email at amy@PCOSdiva.com.
And real quick, I know you're really busy. My goodness, you've got a lot of work that you're doing. Do you meet with people? Do you have any personal clients that you work with, or is it, because I know your schedule's pretty booked with the book and everything you've got going, or is that something that may happen in the future?
So right now I've taken a little hiatus on personal one-on-one coaching, but I do offer programs throughout the year. I offer a 14-day Sparkle Cleanse program, which is geared towards doing a functional food-based cleanse and learning about endocrine disruptors and how to eliminate them or reduce them in your life. And then I have another program called Jumpstart, which is a program that really kicks you into gear in 7 days into a PCOS Diva lifestyle. And those are available at PCOSdiva.com as well.
Oh, perfect. Well, Amy, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us today and sharing all of your wisdom and insight with Healing PCOS. We so appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, Amy. It has been such a pleasure to spend this time with you and, of course, to talk about your new book, Healing PCOS. Again, if you'd like to connect with Amy, you can at PCOSdiva.com, where you can learn more about great tips on how to improve your health and life, and also more about her book, Healing PCOS. Healing PCOS is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie bookstores. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.